Hello, Instagram video is simply not long enough to encapsulate my thoughts on seeing the preview of Haunting in Venice, so I thought I'll foray over into YouTube to give you all the information. I want to start off by saying I did this with Tandem as a read-along, then a watch-along, and I was kindly invited to the preview by Disney, The Times, Tandem, some combination of the three. And so I reread the text before I did this. I am a big Agatha Christie fan. I've written a couple of dissertations on her and presented a couple of papers on her, and I think that she's a writer that needs to be taken a lot more seriously, and that's one of the gripes I had about this film. So in the foreword to the republication of Halloween Party as A Haunting in Venice, the screenwriter Michael Green says that the film he's made has committed a murder, the corpse being the source material which he adapted. I'm inclined to agree with this, but he goes on to say that Christie fans love Christie hard. They reread the same copies, in the same chair, sipping the same tea, from the same chipped mug. Her books bring specific comfort, so any deviation from experience hits like sand in the flannel sheets. He continues, when you read a book you have a version of in your mind, you see a character's hair bounce a certain way, their scarf is the fond shade of blue of your old bedroom curtains, you inadvertently place the camera in the exact corner of the room at eye level, so when you sit down to a film with its own hairstyles and scarf colour and camera angles, you will be host to an unconscious reckoning between the first and the second versions, and it hurts to let go. I found the initial declaration that Michael Green made that he'd committed to a murder humorous because after watching the trailers I was already inclined to agree. I appreciated that he understood what he'd undertaken in order to make these changes. However, the end of this foreword for me encapsulates the ideas as someone who does not really see the depth of Christie's work. The image of tea in the same chair in the same chipped mug shows that Green sees Christie's readership as comfort readers, as Miss Marple television adaptation with a knitted blanket and a whodunit. The implication that the outrage of his film, if there would be some, and there will be, would be because the image in the reader's head is different to the film, with quibbles over details such as scarf colour and hairstyles, aims for humour, but lands in condescension. Because Michael Green doesn't just play with costume and camera angles, though one scene in particular reminded me of the Francis Bourgeois head camera thing. He changes the book entirely. Halloween Party was written in 1969, at a time in Britain when women were going through a period of liberation, particularly sexual liberation to some extent, with the introduction of the pill in 1961. It was also a time of increased sexually motivated crimes and crimes against children, or certainly an increased media reporting of those crimes. The Moors murders in particular, which occurred between 1963 and 1965, are deeply evident within the text. There are certainly some outdated opinions in the novel, not least to do with mental health and the popularity of sanatoriums and asylums at the time. This is all stuff that needs to be modernised. And it's perhaps due to the discourse around Ian Brady, who was a Broadmoor hospital, and the sort of dialogue that was going around in the country at the time. And I think that if they had gone down a mental health angle and updated it and modernised it and explored that a lot more, then the adaptation could have been really successful. I myself do enjoy some modern adaptations of Christie. I really like from a few years ago, the BBC Christmas adaptation of And Then There Were None, and I also enjoyed elements of the recent Pale Horse, which had modern domestic technology emphasised as the sort of evil force, just as it is in the text, but made a lot sort of madder and more menacing. However, Green and Branagh's A Haunting in Venice cannot truly be called an adaptation, as the only similarity between the film and the original text is some of the characters' names. So let's start with the setting. This was my central gripe based on the trailers, and after seeing the film, it's still bouncing around in my brain. I just don't really understand why they made the decision they did. Why Venice, and why change the name of the film when there's still a Halloween party in it, in Venice? Like, you can still be called Halloween Party. So the film opens with this kind of sweeping, idyllic, slightly computerized portrayal of Venice, with azure blue canals and sun shining. Playing over the top of this Italian scene is not a beautiful piece of Italian opera, but a kind of jaunty English piece of music. And the progressive, like, updating the text already seems weird, because they've set it actually back just after the Second World War, or in the 1950s, rather than the end of the 1960s. In terms of the aesthetic, however, this could be the 1920s. We're not getting any kind of like modern clothing going on here. An attempt, I think, was made to pair the location with the characters. Rowena Drake is an opera singer, although we never hear her sing, and she never speaks any Italian. And none of the main cast are Italian either. So you may be thinking, why set it in Italy at all? And also you might be thinking, Halloween isn't the same in Italy as it is in the UK or in North America, so how did they handle that? Well, there's just a flippant line at the start where Ariadne Oliver is like, oh, and of course America brought Halloween back to Italy, which just felt a kind of like bizarre throwaway comment to sort of cover that plot hole. I think, so there is an angle in the film which I really like, where it talks about mental health, the war, PTSD, the ghosts of the past. And I think had they gone fully down that angle, the setting of Italy would have made total sense, because of the big involvement they had in the Second World War. And I think that could have been a really interesting angle to go down with this adaptation. But it didn't really fully go there. I think the biggest flaw for me, though, is not the location or the sort of time change, but the treatment of Ariadne Oliver. And I should say that I do really like Tina Fey. I think she's a really great actress, writer, and everything. I think she's really good in Only Murders in the Building, and she kind of plays a similar character in this, which is not great, because Ariadne Oliver is such a beloved character. It's very suggested that she's a plus-size character. She's a similar age to Poirot. She's an incredibly successful and popular crime writer. And Agatha Christie kind of uses her as a fictional version of herself that she puts into the books. And we can see this because of the fact that she uses Ariadne Oliver to apologise for her own plot holes from previous books. And also because she uses Ariadne Oliver to express some of her annoyance with certain things, like fan mail and also inland revenue, which Christie was dealing with massively at this period, because she didn't really submit tax returns. Also, Ariadne Oliver loves apples, and one of the only things that we know about Christie from her few interviews is that she loves apples. So casting a slim, stereotypically beautiful American actress as this older female plus-size character, for me, felt really problematic. And then to really rub salt into the wound, it's revealed that Ariadne Oliver in this film only becomes famous because she writes up some of Poirot's previous cases as under the thinly veiled character of Sven Kjærsen, whereas in the book, she's already successful when she meets Poirot. So suggesting that her fame only became from a man, I felt frankly sexist and completely out of place in the film. Not only this, it's actually made into a plot point. At some point it's revealed that Ariadne Oliver in the film sort of hires several people to coerce Poirot into turning up and trying to solve a sort of fake clairvoyant thing, only because Ariadne Oliver hasn't sold many books in the last few years and wants another bestseller. So even in an attempt to modernise Christie, they've actually sent one of the main female characters back in time. And as you can tell, some of my prejudice against the film did come before I went to see it, from the previous Brown and Poirot films and also from the trailer. So when I was kindly allowed to bring a +1 to the preview, I brought along my friend Christopher, who, unlike me, watches and enjoys horror films. Maybe this isn't a Poirot film, I thought maybe it's a horror film that just couldn't sell in its own right, so they attached it to a commercially successful franchise. At the end of the film, however, we both agreed that it doesn't work as a Poirot adaptation, and it also doesn't work as a horror film. All of the jump scares are already in the trailer. There's nothing much going on in the film to scare you, and it didn't feel convincing enough to suspend our disbelief. So if it didn't work as a Poirot adaptation and it didn't work as a horror film, it must have worked as a whodunit, right? no. An attempt to out Christie. Christie went awry, and the film is full of plot holes. The poison is that very Conan Doyle situation of being a rare poison that none of the audience have ever heard of. And though we are told that the garden has been replanted, we're not told what plant it's been planted with. And the only photo we're shown is an old Polaroid that we can't see what the plants are. Secondly, the reveal at the end involves a flashback of one of the characters trying this honey and being like, this isn't wildflower honey. But the flashback, it didn't happen in the film. There's a flashback, but the first conversation just wasn't shown to us. I don't know if that was removed by mistake, but it was completely bizarre. And it completely goes against the rules that Christie herself helped make with the Detective Club, that you can't just have a rare sort of poison to solve your way out of a complicated puzzle. The audience must be given all the clues to solve the murder themselves. And so I think Michael Green was right in his forward. Christie fans are hard fans of Christie, and they're not going to be happy with this film. But I also think that the fans of Kenneth Branagh and the previous Poirot films that were happy aren't going to be happy either, because it just doesn't hold up as a plot in its own right. Thank you.